What if I told you that the person you trusted most, the one who shared your childhood, could orchestrate a betrayal so profound it would shatter your entire world on your 30th birthday? For years, I, Sarah Miller, believed my sister Emily was just Emily. Annoying, sure, often selfish, but ultimately family. That belief, however, was a fragile house of cards, destined to collapse spectacularly on a day meant for celebration. This isn't just a story about a ruined dress. It's about the unraveling of a lifetime of assumptions, a journey from quiet resentment to a burning desire for justice that consumed my every waking moment. Imagine preparing for your milestone birthday, a day you've dreamed of for years. The dress, a shimmering sapphire blue, was perfect. It was a gift from my late grandmother, a cherished heirloom, and it felt like wearing a piece of her love. Every stitch held a memory, every sequin a whisper of her warmth. I planned a small, intimate gathering at our family home in the suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona. Just close friends and family. This wasn't about grand gestures. It was about connection, about stepping into a new decade feeling loved and secure. That dress wasn't just fabric, it was my emotional armor, my symbol of hope for the future. Then came the phone call, just hours before guests were due to arrive. Emily, her voice syrupy sweet, claimed she was running late. "Don't worry, sis," she chirped. "I'll bring your dress up for you. I know how much it means." A pang of unease shot through me. Emily rarely offered help without an ulterior motive. But I dismissed it. It was my birthday, after all. What could possibly go wrong? What could go wrong? Everything. I remember the exact moment I walked into my bedroom, my heart swelling with anticipation, only to have it plummet into my stomach like a stone. There, on my bed, was my sapphire dress. But it wasn't the shimmering garment I remembered. It was a grotesque, unrecognizable mess. A thick, dark, greasy stain, smelling faintly of rotting food and something acrid, had been deliberately smeared across the delicate silk, rendering it utterly unwearable. It looked like someone had emptied a week's worth of kitchen trash directly onto my cherished heirloom. My breath caught in my throat, my vision blurred. This wasn't an accident. This was an act of pure, calculated malice. The betrayal hit me harder than any physical blow. It wasn't just the dress, it was the deliberate act, the premeditation, the sheer cruelty of it. Emily, my own sister, had done this. My mind reeled, trying to reconcile the smiling face on the phone with the venomous act before me. The resentment I'd always felt towards her, buried under layers of forced politeness and family obligation, erupted like a volcano. This wasn't just about a dress. It was about every slight, every backhanded compliment, every moment she'd tried to diminish me. This was the culmination of a lifetime of being second best in her eyes. My 30th birthday, the day I was supposed to feel celebrated, became the day I felt utterly humiliated and heartbroken. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the first guests. Panic clawed at my throat. I couldn't face anyone looking like this, feeling like this. I grabbed the nearest, most unflattering outfit I owned, an old t-shirt and sweatpants, and tried to compose myself. But inside, a quiet rage began to simmer, a dangerous obsession taking root. I wouldn't just let this go. Not this time. The party started, and I plastered on a fake smile, trying to deflect questions about my attire. Emily arrived fashionably late, of course, looking radiant and completely innocent. Her eyes, however, held a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. Triumph? Cruelty? I watched her, every fiber of my being screaming in silent accusation. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd ruined my day and gotten away with it. But she had no idea what she had truly unleashed. Then the front door opened again. A hush fell over the room. Every head turned, and when Emily saw who had just walked through that door, her face, which moments before had been radiating smug satisfaction, drained of all color. Her jaw dropped, her eyes widened in disbelief, then in pure, unadulterated terror. Because the person standing there, impeccably dressed and radiating an aura of undeniable authority, was someone she absolutely, under no circumstances, ever wanted to see again. And their arrival was no coincidence. It was the first, perfectly orchestrated step in a plan that would turn her world, and mine, completely upside down. You absolutely won't believe what happened next, and how this single moment set in motion a chain of events that redefined justice for us both. My 16th birthday was supposed to be a milestone, a shimmering gateway into young adulthood. Instead, it became the day the world, specifically my sister Stella, decided to remind me of my place. I had spent months dreaming about this particular dress. It was a flowy cerulean blue, a shade that reminded me of the deepest ocean, with delicate silver embroidery that sparkled like starlight. I'd saved every penny from my part-time job at the local diner, enduring endless shifts of greasy fries and demanding customers, just to buy it. This wasn't just a dress. It was a symbol of my independence, a testament to my hard work, and a beacon of hope for a night where I could finally feel beautiful, seen, and for once, not overshadowed by Stella. The party was at our house, a modest suburban home in upstate New York that always felt too small for Stella's outsized personality. Our living room, usually a chaotic jumble of textbooks and forgotten laundry, had been transformed with streamers and balloons. The air buzzed with nervous excitement, a feeling entirely mine, as Stella flitted about, already the center of attention in her usual effortless way. My best friend Chloe was due any minute, and even my crush Mark had RSVP'd. Everything felt perfect, almost too perfect. I had meticulously laid out the cerulean dress on my bed, a silent promise of the evening to come. My heart thrummed with anticipation as I stepped into the shower, humming along to some pop song, imagining the compliments, the way the fabric would catch the light. I pictured Mark's eyes, maybe a little wider than usual, a subtle smile playing on his lips. This was my night. This was my moment. When I emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, the scent of expensive shampoo still clinging to my hair, a horrifying sight greeted me. My bedroom door stood ajar, and a sickeningly sweet, acrid smell assaulted my nostrils. My eyes darted to the bed. The cerulean dress, my beautiful hard-earned dress, was no longer a vision of elegance. It was a grotesque, stained mess. Half-eaten pizza crusts, sticky soda residue, and what looked suspiciously like a glob of melted chocolate ice cream clung to the delicate fabric. A crumpled, greasy napkin was haphazardly draped over one of the silver-embroidered sleeves. It looked as if someone had intentionally, maliciously, used it as a trash can. A cold dread seeped into my bones, quickly followed by a searing wave of fury. My breath hitched in my throat. Only one person in this house would dare do something so utterly cruel, so utterly Stella. My hands clenched into fists, the towel barely staying wrapped around me. My vision blurred with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage. This wasn't an accident. This was a statement. I stormed into the living room, a hurricane of fury in my eyes. Stella was there, laughing, holding court with a group of friends, her own perfectly styled hair shimmering under the fairy lights. She looked up, her smile faltering slightly as she saw my face, pale and contorted with anger. Her eyes, usually so dismissive, held a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. Triumph, perhaps, or a fleeting moment of guilt. "Stella!" My voice was a raw, guttural sound, barely recognizable as my own. The music seemed to die down, conversations ceased. All eyes turned to me, standing there in my towel, dripping wet, a symbol of my utter humiliation. She raised an eyebrow, a picture of feigned innocence. "Yes? Same character from section 1? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." The casual cruelty in her tone, the way she effortlessly dismissed my pain, only fanned the flames of my anger. My dress? My birthday dress. You ruined it, I shrieked, the words tearing from my throat. You threw trash all over it. Stella's perfectly manicured hand went to her mouth, a dramatic gasp escaping her lips. Me? Same character from Section 1. How could you accuse me of such a thing? I've been down here helping Mom all evening. She glanced at our mother, who was bustling around the kitchen, oblivious to the brewing storm. Her friends exchanged amused glances, a few snickers echoing in the sudden silence. The humiliation was unbearable. Don't lie to me, Stella. I know it was you. You always do this. You always have to ruin everything for me. My voice cracked, the raw emotion threatening to overwhelm me. The injustice of it, the sheer audacity, was a physical blow. This wasn't just about a dress. It was about years of being belittled, overshadowed, and deliberately hurt by my own sister. This was about a lifetime of feeling like I was nothing more than a background character in her glamorous, self-centered narrative. Stella's expression hardened, her feigned innocence replaced by a chilling glare. Get over yourself, same character from Section 1, it's just a dress. And honestly, it wasn't even that great. You probably shouldn't have left your door open if you didn't want accidents to happen. The casual flick of her wrist, the dismissive wave of her hand, felt like a slap across my face. She made it sound like it was my fault, like I deserved it. The betrayal cut deeper than any stain on a dress. It wasn't just the act, it was the utter lack of remorse, the cold calculation in her eyes. My own sister, the person who was supposed to be my ally, my family, had deliberately sabotaged my one night to shine. The resentment that had simmered beneath the surface for years finally boiled over, scalding everything in its path. In that moment, standing there in my towel, exposed and vulnerable, a new feeling took root in my heart, a cold, hard resolve. I knew with absolute certainty that Stella would pay for this. My birthday might have been ruined, but this was only the beginning of something much bigger. This was the start of my revenge. The acrid smell of bleach, and something vaguely metallic clung to the air, a cruel parody of the expensive perfume I'd imagined wearing. My beautiful cerulean dress, the one I'd scrimped and saved for, now lay on my bed, a sodden, ruined mess. Someone had taken a pair of scissors to it, slashing through the delicate embroidery, leaving jagged wounds across the fabric. And then, as if that wasn't enough, they'd poured an entire bottle of bleach over it, creating grotesque, spreading white stains that obliterated the vibrant blue. My breath hitched in my throat, a dry, rasping sound that felt alien. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a cold, simmering rage that was quickly eclipsing every other emotion. Stella. It could only be Stella. A wave of nausea washed over me, but I forced it down, replacing it with an icy clarity. The humiliation of being found in just a towel, the absolute destruction of something I cherished, the sheer malice of it all, it coalesced into a single burning certainty. This wasn't just a prank. This was an act of war. My mind raced, sifting through years of Stella's subtle digs, her effortless way of making me feel small, her constant need to be the brightest star in any room. This dress was my attempt to shine, and she had extinguished it with a brutal efficiency that chilled me to the bone. The party, my friends, Mark, all of it faded into the background. All that mattered was the ruined dress, and the sister who had so carelessly, so cruelly destroyed it. I walked to my closet, my movements stiff and deliberate, the cold resolve hardening within me. There was no other dress, no backup plan. This was it. My birthday outfit, my moment, obliterated. I pulled out a faded, oversized t-shirt and a pair of old sweatpants, the sartorial equivalent of waving a white flag. But as I dressed, the flag in my mind was black, emblazoned with a skull and crossbones. Stella had declared war, and I, in my quiet, unassuming way, was about to become a formidable opponent. The sounds of the party downstairs began to filter up. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. My friends, Chloe, Mark, they were all there, waiting for me. And I was trapped. A prisoner in my own room, wearing the uniform of defeat. A fresh surge of anger, hot and visceral, pulsed through me. How dare she? How dare Stella take this from me? This wasn't just about a dress. It was about every time she'd stolen my thunder, every compliment she'd redirected, every moment she'd effortlessly eclipsed me. This was the culmination of years of quiet resentment, finally exploding into open hostility. I stood before my mirror, staring at my reflection. My eyes, usually soft, were now hard, glinting with an unfamiliar fire. My lips, usually quick to smile, were pressed into a thin, grim line. This wasn't the girl who had dreamed of dancing with Mark. This was someone new, someone forged in the crucible of betrayal and humiliation. The party was still happening, a vibrant, joyful cacophony downstairs. And Stella, I knew, would be at the center of it, basking in the glow of attention, completely oblivious to the storm she had just unleashed. A thought, cold and precise, began to form in my mind. She wanted to ruin my night? She wanted to make me feel small and insignificant? Fine. But she wouldn't get away with it. Not this time. My revenge wouldn't be loud or dramatic. It would be subtle, insidious, a slow burn that would unravel her perfect world piece by piece. I didn't want to just get even. I wanted to make her understand, truly understand, the depth of the pain she had inflicted. And the first step was to appear at the party. I took a deep, steadying breath, pushing down the urge to scream, to cry, to smash something. Those were reactions for the old me. The new me was calm, calculating. I walked out of my room, past the ruined dress, past the lingering smell of bleach, and descended the stairs. Each step was a declaration, a silent promise. The music grew louder, the laughter more distinct. I saw Stella radiant in a shimmering green dress, holding court by the snack table, her laughter echoing through the room. She looked up as I reached the bottom step, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second as her eyes swept over my drab clothes. A flicker of triumph, quickly masked, crossed her face. "Oh, there you are, birthday girl!" she chirped, her voice just a little too loud, a little too sweet. "What happened? Didn't you like your dress?" My gaze met hers, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a sliver of apprehension in her eyes. She knew, she absolutely knew. But I simply smiled, a tight, artificial smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Oh, this," I said, gesturing vaguely at my outfit. Just felt like something more comfortable tonight. The lie tasted like ash, but the look on Stella's face, a mixture of confusion and something akin to unease, was a small victory. This was only the beginning. The party raged around me, a cacophony of laughter and pop music, but I moved through it like a ghost. Every smile I offered felt like a betrayal to myself. Every polite nod a concession to Stella's carefully constructed world. My eyes, however, were constantly searching, calculating. I watched her, Stella, as she floated from group to group, basking in the glow of adoration, completely oblivious to the cold, hard resolve solidifying within me. She was wearing a new dress, a shimmering emerald green that accentuated her eyes, a dress I hadn't seen before. It was expensive, I knew, because Stella never settled for anything less. A fresh wave of resentment washed over me, burning hotter than before. Chloe, ever perceptive, found me by the snack table, a half-eaten chip in my hand. "Are you okay?" she whispered, her brow furrowed with concern. "You've been quiet." I forced a smile. "Just a lot going on, you know. 16 is a big deal." She squeezed my arm. "Yeah, but you look like you're plotting world domination." A genuine, albeit dark, laugh escaped me. Something like that. I glanced at Stella, who was now holding court by the punch bowl, her laughter ringing out above the music. "I just realized something important tonight, Chloe." "What's that?" "That some people, they just don't change, and sometimes you have to fight fire with fire." Chloe's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of understanding passing between us. She knew my history with Stella, the endless little slights, the constant undermining, but she also knew I rarely, if ever, retaliated. I was the one who always backed down, who sought peace, who tried to understand. Not anymore. The sight of my ruined dress, the smell of that acrid liquid, had scorched away any lingering desire for peace. My resentment had curdled into something far more potent, a quiet, simmering obsession with evening the score. The night wore on, a blur of forced cheerfulness on my part. I danced a few clumsy dances, made small talk, even managed a brief, awkward conversation with Mark. He was kind, if a little oblivious, and the thought of what Stella had done to prevent me from feeling beautiful for him twisted a new knot in my stomach. The anger was no longer a sudden burst. It was a constant hum beneath my skin, a low-frequency vibration that fueled every thought. Later, as guests began to thin out, I overheard Stella talking to one of her friends near the kitchen. Her voice, usually so loud and confident, was lowered, conspiratorial. I paused, pretending to adjust a streamer, my ears straining. "Honestly," Stella giggled, "I don't know what she was thinking. That dress was hideous anyway. I did her a favor, my blood ran cold. She had admitted it, not just to herself but to someone else." The betrayal was complete. Absolute. It wasn't an accident, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate, malicious, and designed to hurt me. The knowledge hit me with the force of a physical blow, yet I remained outwardly calm. My hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms, but my face remained neutral. I felt a strange sense of clarity, a sharp focus I hadn't possessed before. The confusion was gone, replaced by an unwavering certainty. I slipped away, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I needed to think, to plan. This wasn't just about a dress anymore. This was about years of being overshadowed, of being dismissed, of being treated as less than. Stella had crossed a line, and I was going to make sure she understood the consequences. The sweetness of her triumph, the ease with which she discarded my feelings, it all fed the growing fire within me. Up in my room, the ruined dress still lay on my bed, a crumpled, stained testament to her cruelty. I picked it up, the fabric feeling heavy and lifeless in my hands. The beautiful cerulean was now blotched with dark, oily stains, the silver embroidery dulled and matted. I held it close, the acrid smell still faintly clinging to it, and a single tear traced a path down my cheek. But it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of resolve. I knew Stella's weak spots, her vulnerabilities. I had lived with her for 16 years, witnessing every insecurity, every hidden fear she possessed. She cultivated an image of perfection, of effortless charm, but beneath it all, there was a desperate need for validation, a fragile ego that crumbled under scrutiny. That was her Achilles heel, and I knew exactly how to strike. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of conversations, past incidents, Stella's deepest desires. She craved attention, admiration, and most of all, she craved to be seen as superior. Anything that threatened that image sent her into a tailspin. This wasn't going to be some petty act of revenge. This was going to be a masterpiece, a carefully orchestrated symphony of comeuppance that would leave her reeling. The thought sent a thrilling, dangerous shiver down my spine. The party was over, but my game had just begun. My mind raced, fueled by the fresh sting of betrayal and the bitter taste of my ruined birthday. The initial shock had given way to a cold, calculated fury. Stella thought she had won, that her petty act of destruction had cemented her dominance. She had no idea the monster she had awakened. This wasn't just about a dress anymore. It was about years of being overshadowed, dismissed, and deliberately undermined. Every slight, every cutting remark, every time she'd stolen my thunder, it all coalesced into a singular, burning desire for retribution. I wanted to hit her where it hurt most, to expose her carefully constructed facade, to make her feel even a fraction of the humiliation she had so gleefully inflicted upon me. My first step was research. Stella, with all her outward confidence, was surprisingly insecure about one thing, her academic performance. She was fiercely competitive, especially with me, and prided herself on her intelligence, despite frequently cutting corners. I knew she was taking a demanding AP chemistry class, one she constantly complained about but also boasted about acing. A seed of an idea began to form, dark and insidious. I remembered overhearing her grumbling about a major upcoming project, a complex experiment that was worth a huge percentage of her final grade. It was due in a few weeks, just before midterms. I started paying closer attention, listening in on her phone calls, casually leaving my door ajar when she was in the hallway. She was struggling, more than she let on. The project involved synthesizing a particular organic compound, and she was clearly overwhelmed. Her usual tactic of charming her way out of difficult situations wasn't working with her notoriously strict chemistry teacher, Mr. Harrison. He was known for his unwavering adherence to rules and his zero-tolerance policy for academic dishonesty. This was my opening. The plan began to take shape, intricate and precise, like a chemical formula itself. I needed proof, undeniable evidence that would expose her. I knew Stella kept all her school materials in a specific haphazard pile on her desk, a habit she never broke. Her project notebook, filled with her messy handwriting and half-finished diagrams, would be there. The challenge was getting to it without her knowing, without a trace. One afternoon, a few days after my disastrous birthday, I found my chance. Mom and Dad had gone out for groceries, and Stella had left for soccer practice, leaving the house empty, save for me. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of anticipation and nerves. This felt illicit, dangerous. But the memory of my ruined dress, the image of Stella's smug face, propelled me forward. I crept into her room, the floorboards creaking under my weight, each sound amplified in the silence. Her room was a typical teenage disaster zone, clothes strewn everywhere, posters peeling from the walls, but there, on her desk, was the stack of notebooks. My fingers trembled as I sifted through them, finally locating the thick spiral-bound one labeled AP Chem Project. I flipped it open, scanning the pages. It was a jumble of notes, calculations, and frustrated scribbles. Then I saw it, a small, almost imperceptible smudge on one of the final pages, a faint imprint of a diagram. It looked like a molecular structure, but it was too faint to be useful. My eyes darted around the room, searching. Stella often used tracing paper for her more complex diagrams, a habit from her art classes. I found a roll tucked away in her art supply drawer. A wicked idea sparked. I carefully placed a fresh sheet of tracing paper over the smudged page in her notebook. With a soft lead pencil, I meticulously traced over the faint lines, bringing the diagram to life. It was a complex organic molecule, clearly labeled. Then, I found the project rubric, tucked inside the front cover of her notebook. It specifically stated that all diagrams and experimental procedures must be original and hand-drawn. Any form of tracing or copying, even from one's own previous work, was strictly forbidden and constituted academic dishonesty. I wasn't done. I knew Stella had a habit of leaving her laptop open on her bed, even when she stepped out for a short while, thinking no one would dare touch it. I tiptoed over, my breath held tight in my chest. Her screen was on, displaying a research paper she was supposedly writing for the same chemistry project. I quickly scrolled through it, looking for anything out of place. And there it was, a paragraph, word for word, copied directly from an online scientific journal, without any citation. A quick search on my own phone confirmed it. Plagiarism. My heart pounded with a mixture of exhilaration and dread. I was crossing a line I never thought I would, but Stella had crossed it first when she destroyed my dress, when she tried to destroy my night. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. I took a few discreet photos of the plagiarized text on her laptop screen, making sure the URL of the source was visible. I also took a photo of the trace diagram in her notebook, carefully angling it to show the original faint smudge underneath the tracing paper. The evidence was undeniable. I replaced everything exactly as I had found it, leaving no trace of my intrusion. My hands were still shaking as I walked out of her room, but a cold, hard resolve had settled in my chest. Stella had always believed she was untouchable, that her charm and cunning could get her out of any situation. But Mr. Harrison was a different breed. He had a reputation for being unyielding when it came to academic integrity. The thought of her facing his wrath, of her perfect academic record being tarnished, brought a grim satisfaction. The game was escalating, and I was holding all the cards. The climax was approaching, and Stella had no idea what was coming. The party was in full swing, a cacophony of laughter and pop music thrumming through the house. I watched Stella, oblivious, as she mingled, a dazzling smile plastered on her face, accepting compliments on her outfit. She had no idea the house was a carefully constructed trap, every smiling face a potential witness, every casual conversation a prelude to her downfall. My heart pounded with a rhythm that was both anticipation and a strange, cold dread. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about reclaiming something she had stolen from me long ago, something far more precious than a dress. Then, the doorbell chimed, a sound that cut through the party chatter like a knife. Stella, ever the gracious host, glided towards the door, her movements fluid and confident. I saw her reach for the handle, her hand poised, and a shiver ran down my spine. This was it. The moment I had meticulously planned, the culmination of weeks of quiet manipulation, was finally upon us. She pulled the door open, her smile ready, but it faltered, then froze, replaced by a look of utter bewilderment, quickly morphing into horror. Standing on our doorstep, not Mark, not Chloe, but Mr. Harrison, his stern face framed by the porch light, his eyes scanning the festive scene with an air of profound disapproval. Beside him stood Principal Thompson, her arms crossed, her expression equally grim. The music seemed to mute itself, the laughter died down, replaced by a suffocating silence that spread through the living room like a virus. Stella's face went white, a stark contrast to the vibrant party lights. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Mr. Harrison's voice when he spoke was low and precise, cutting through the silence. "Stella, we need to talk. This concerns your recent submission for the state history competition." He held up a thick manila folder, its contents seemingly heavy with unspoken accusations. Principal Thompson stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Stella. "We received an anonymous tip, Stella, regarding the originality of your work. Plagiarism is a serious offense." Stella's eyes darted frantically around the room, searching for an escape, a friendly face, someone to corroborate her innocence. Her gaze landed on me, wide and pleading, but I met it with a blank stare, a carefully constructed mask of innocence. The betrayal in her eyes was palpable, a raw, exposed nerve. She finally understood. This wasn't some random coincidence. This was deliberate. This was me. A murmur rippled through the guests, a mix of confusion and dawning realization. Whispers started, growing louder, dissecting the scene unfolding before them. Plagiarism? Stella? The perfect facade she had so carefully constructed was cracking, revealing the raw, vulnerable girl beneath, the girl she usually hid from the world, the one I knew all too well. Her parents, alerted by the sudden silence, emerged from the kitchen, their faces etched with concern. My mother, usually so quick to defend Stella, looked utterly bewildered, her eyes darting between her eldest daughter and the two stern school officials. My father, ever the pragmatist, simply looked disappointed. "There must be some mistake," Stella stammered, her voice barely a whisper, a stark contrast to her usual booming confidence. I wrote that paper myself." Mr. Harrison remained impassive. "We have compelling evidence to suggest otherwise, Stella. We've cross-referenced certain passages, and the similarities are undeniable." And the anonymous tip included specific details that only someone intimately familiar with your process, or rather, your lack thereof, would know. He paused, letting his words hang in the air, thick with implication. Principal Thompson added, her voice firm, "We've also been made aware of certain Discrepancies in your past academic achievements, Stella. This incident has prompted a broader review. The color drained completely from Stella's face. Her perfect world was crumbling around her, not with a bang, but with the quiet, devastating precision of a well-placed domino. The girl who always had an answer, always a clever retort, was utterly speechless. Her eyes, once filled with self-assurance, were now pools of fear and desperation. This wasn't just about a history paper. It was about her entire academic future. Her scholarship to the prestigious university she had bragged about for months. Her carefully cultivated image of effortless brilliance. I watched, a strange mix of triumph and emptiness swirling within me. This was the moment I had craved, the moment Stella's carefully constructed empire came crashing down. The sweet taste of revenge was on my tongue, but it was tinged with something else, something I couldn't quite name. The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable, as Stella stood exposed, her perfect world shattered, her birthday party transformed into a public inquisition. The air crackled with the unspoken question, who could have done this? And as her gaze met mine again, a flicker of understanding, then pure, unadulterated hatred, ignited in her eyes. She knew. She finally knew. The gasp that ripped through the living room wasn't mine, but a collective exhale from the dozens of teenagers who had gathered to celebrate Stella. Her carefully constructed facade, the one she wore like a second skin, had finally cracked. The silence, thick and suffocating, amplified every tiny sound, the distant thrum of the bass from the stereo, the nervous shuffle of someone's sneakers, the frantic beating of my own heart. Stella's eyes, usually so dismissive, now held a raw, exposed vulnerability I'd never seen. The hatred I saw ignite in them was a mirror of my own long-simmering resentment. She knew, truly knew, that her reign of terror over my happiness was finally over. My parents, caught in the crossfire of this silent war, looked between us with dawning horror. My mom's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief, while my dad's jaw tightened, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by a sternness I rarely witnessed. This wasn't just about a dress anymore, it was about years of unspoken grievances, of a younger sister constantly eclipsed, constantly undermined. This was the moment the truth, ugly and undeniable, clawed its way to the surface. Then, from the back of the crowd, a voice, hesitant at first, broke the tension. "Stella, did you really do that?" It was Chloe, her voice barely a whisper, but in the sudden quiet it sounded like a shout. Other whispers followed, a ripple effect of doubt and accusation. The party, which had moments ago been a vibrant celebration, transformed into a courtroom, with Stella as the sole defendant. Her friends, the ones who always orbited her like satellites, now shifted uncomfortably, their loyalty visibly wavering under the weight of the collective gaze. Stella, however, was not one to crumble easily. A flicker of her old defiance returned, hardening her features. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice shaking slightly, but still projecting an air of false indignation. "I don't know what she's trying to pull." She pointed a trembling finger at me, attempting to shift the blame, to regain control of the narrative. But it was too late. The seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing rapidly. My gaze remained steady, unwavering. I didn't need to say anything. The evidence, the smell, the sudden arrival of Mark, the way the truth had been laid bare. It all spoke for itself. My silence was my most powerful weapon, allowing Stella to thrash in the quicksand of her own making. The irony was palpable. She had sought to ruin my night, to make me feel small and insignificant. But in doing so, she had inadvertently orchestrated her own downfall. Mark stepped forward, his expression a mixture of confusion and disappointment. He looked directly at Stella, his voice calm but firm. "Stella, you were the only one in her room besides her, and that smell, it's pretty strong." His words, delivered without malice, yet with an undeniable ring of truth, were the final nail in her coffin. Mark, the boy I had hoped to impress, the boy Stella had always tried to claim as her own, was now standing on the side of truth. On my side. The betrayal on Stella's face was profound, a raw wound exposed to everyone. My parents finally intervened, their voices hushed but firm. My mom took Stella by the arm, guiding her away from the center of the room, her expression a mix of anger and profound sadness. My dad, meanwhile, turned to me, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. "We'll talk about this later, sweetheart," he murmured, his voice laced with an apology I knew was for years of overlooking Stella's behavior. The party didn't immediately dissolve, but the atmosphere had irrevocably changed. The music felt hollow, the laughter forced. Stella's friends, no longer able to pretend, began to disperse, their whispers following them out the door. Stella herself, after a heated, hushed conversation with our parents, retreated to her room, the sound of her door slamming echoing through the now sparse living room. A strange calm settled over me. The fury, the resentment, the burning desire for justice that had consumed me for so long began to recede, replaced by a bittersweet sense of relief. It wasn't the triumphant roar I had imagined, but a quiet, profound understanding. My revenge wasn't about her suffering, not entirely. It was about reclaiming my own narrative, about finally being seen, about standing up for myself after years of being pushed down. Chloe came over, wrapping me in a tight hug. "I'm so sorry, my name," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "But you were so brave." Mark, still standing nearby, offered a small, sympathetic smile. "Happy birthday, my name," he said, his eyes meeting mine, and for the first time that night I felt a genuine warmth spread through me. The cerulean dress was ruined, yes, but something far more valuable had been salvaged. My dignity, my voice, and the quiet, undeniable truth. The night had been a disaster in one sense, but a profound victory in another. Stella's actions had not only exposed her own cruelty but had also, inadvertently, illuminated my strength. The path forward wouldn't be easy, the family dynamics forever altered, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. My 16th birthday wasn't the fairy tale I had envisioned, but it was the day I finally learned to stand tall, even when everything around me felt like trash. And that, I realized, was a far more valuable gift. The air in the courtroom hung heavy, thick with unspoken accusations and the weight of years. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat echoing the final, agonizing moments of this long, drawn-out battle. Across the aisle, my sister Sarah sat rigidly, her face a mask of defiance, but her eyes, for the first time, held a flicker of something akin to fear. This wasn't about a ruined birthday outfit anymore. It was about every slight, every betrayal, every moment she had tried to diminish me, culminating in the shocking revelation of her embezzlement from our family business. I remembered the day the auditors first showed me the discrepancies. My hands had trembled as I stared at the spreadsheets, not wanting to believe what they implied. It was a knot in my stomach that tightened with each new piece of evidence, leading an undeniable trail straight to Sarah. The betrayal was a physical blow, far more devastating than any spilled trash on a dress. It wasn't just money. It was trust, family, and the legacy our parents had built. That initial resentment, the bitterness over years of being overshadowed and undermined, had curdled into a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just seeking justice for myself. I was fighting for our parents' memory, for the integrity of their life's work. The trial itself had been a brutal spectacle. Each day, another layer of Sarah's deceit was peeled back, exposing a web of lies and manipulation that went far deeper than I had ever imagined. Her lawyers painted me as a jealous sibling, desperate to ruin her, but the evidence, meticulously gathered, spoke for itself. I had spent countless nights poring over documents, tracing every fraudulent transaction, every forged signature. It had become an obsession, a relentless pursuit of the truth, fueled by the sting of betrayal. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford, not when the truth was waiting to be uncovered. Now, as the judge's voice cut through the silence, announcing the verdict, a strange calm washed over me. Guilty on all counts. The words hung in the air, a definitive end to the nightmare. Sarah's carefully constructed composure shattered. A strangled cry escaped her lips, and she slumped in her seat, finally looking like the broken woman she had become. It wasn't the triumphant roar I had imagined, no fist-pumping victory. Instead, a profound sadness settled over me. This wasn't a celebration, it was a reckoning. The aftermath was a blur of legalities and family discussions. Our parents, heartbroken and bewildered, struggled to reconcile the daughter they knew with. The one exposed in court. They looked at me with a mixture of pride and sorrow, knowing I had done what was right, but at an immense cost. The business, once teetering on the brink of collapse, slowly began to recover under my leadership. I implemented stricter financial controls, rebuilt trust with our clients, and worked tirelessly to restore its reputation. The weight of that responsibility was heavy, but it was a burden I willingly carried. The closure wasn't a joyous outburst, but a quiet, internal shift. I had sought justice, and I had found it. Sarah was facing the consequences of her actions, a path she had chosen, not one I had forced upon her. I had confronted the deepest betrayal, not just from her, but from the idealized image of sisterhood I had once held. The girl who had cried over a ruined birthday dress had transformed into a woman who understood the true cost of deceit. Walking out of the courthouse that final day, the sun felt warmer, the sky bluer. The air, once heavy, now felt lighter, carrying the promise of a future unburdened by secrets and lies. The bitterness had faded, replaced by a quiet strength. I had learned that some battles leave scars, but those scars can also be a testament to resilience. The relationship with my sister was irrevocably broken, a chasm too wide to bridge. And while that brought a bittersweet ache, it also brought a profound sense of peace. I had reclaimed my narrative, not as the victim of her cruelty, but as the protector of my family's legacy and my own integrity. The journey had been long and painful, but I had emerged, not unscathed, but undeniably whole.